Hello, welcome to Surface Explorer Record, episode 15. I'm Alan. I've been working in IT, software engineering, software development, architecting for over 40 years. And in this series, I'm stepping you through a three-part methodology that I use to work with AI to build applications. The three-step methodology is fairly simple. First, surface. You use AI to surface decisions that you can make. Second, for each of those decisions, you explore options so that you can know what is the best choice for you and for your application. And then finally, the record, you record those decisions in different types of records, documentation, specs that you can give to the AI so that it can build the application as you want it. Now remember, AI doesn't really follow your instructions, so you still need to review it, but these same documents not only give you a blueprint to give to the AI to say, hey, this is what I want you to build, it gives you something later that you can review against and say, is what you built actually match what I gave you? So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with the last part of the build phase. This is part I, and this is where we're getting ready to deploy. All the code has been built. Now we're going to get ready to build the infrastructure as code, the test, the other parts that are getting us ready to deploy our application in the ways that we said earlier in our planning phase. So grab a cup of coffee. Let's go over to VS Code, and we're going to run Claude code in the terminal, and we'll get started on part I of the build phase. Welcome back. So here we are. I have Claude code running in a terminal in the VS Code. And just to remind you where we are, I'm pulled up my implementation status file. This is a file that I use to track the status of the implementation as we're building. And you notice that we have finished parts A through H. So now we are in part I here. There is 0 steps completed. And in part I is where we're actually going to begin building the infrastructure for our application. So here I am in part I. You can see we're going to start with end-to-end test suites. That hasn't been started yet. We're going to do infrastructure. That hasn't been started yet either. These are the two parts that I'm going to do on this video. I'll do the rest of it later, so you don't have to sit here and watch me just fiddle with it, but you'll be able to download the code from GitHub if you want to see it. So let's start. Close this out, get our terminal up where you can see it, and I'll tell Claude Code to enter plan mode and implement phase I1. So now what Claude is doing is it's reading the documentation. Since it has all the documents that I've created before, it has the implementation plan. That implementation plan refers back to the other documents like the product requirements document, the technical design document, all my architectural decision records. So it knows where to go look at, where to go find these documents, and then how to build the I1 phase as it's designed and described in the implementation plan. So I'm going to let Claude run for a while, and I will come back when it's finished with I1, and we'll see what the next step is. Okay, welcome back. So Claude Code has finished phase I1. You can see here in my implementation status document, everything from I1 is checked off. Now, I wanted to show you here, I'm going to put a prompt in. Let's say that you're going through an implementation like this and Claude does something and you're really not sure exactly what this means. So it's very important that while you're working with Claude Code or any other AI, while it's doing the work, that you understand, at least at a high level, what's going on. So I've shown this before in previous episodes, but in this part, I'm just going to stop and I'm going to say, describe the test just completed for phase I1. Remember, the status document said that it was making E2E or end-to-end test. I'm telling to describe the test. Why are they important to the project? When should they be run? When should they be modified? So it's important to ask questions like this if you don't understand what's going on, and let Claude explain it to you, or your AI, whichever AI you're using. So see, Claude can go through and tell you all about these end-to-end tests, why they matter, and even if you don't understand everything exactly, everything perfectly, you'll at least get a better high-level understanding of what's going on in your project. And later on down the road, you won't have surprises that come back and bite you or cause problems with your project. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to tell Claude to go ahead and enter plan mode and implement phase I2. I2 is where we began building some of the infrastructure. And when Claude finishes this, I'm going to show you some additional work that you can do from some of this infrastructure planning that will help you document your project. So I'll come back in a few minutes when Claude finishes. Okay, welcome back. So while Claude continues to work on step I2, I thought I would open another terminal and get Claude to continue working on some other work for me. And this time, I'm going to get it to create some diagrams. Now, this is a step that you can use anytime in your project, but I specifically like it for infrastructure diagrams. And all I'm going to do is to ask Claude to create some infrastructure diagrams based on this project. Now you can use these, I'll just kick this off. You can use these for your own use, just so that you understand the infrastructure better. You can put them in documentation. If you have a technical support website, you could add them to that. But what I started doing is just say, hey, make some suggestions of what types of diagrams we should make. So now, if we look through, we see there's several. There's a deployment runtime diagrams, different ones. Here's AWS resources. Here's a pipeline lifecycle. So there's a few there that we should do. You know what? For now, let's just have it do all of them. So I'm going to step through and just tell Claude to make all of these. And I don't want Mermaid. I don't want GraphViz. Let's see, what should I use? Let's just use the Python diagram lab just fine. And we'll put those up. I'll put those in docs diagrams and go. So now I've kicked Claude off. He's going to create all these diagrams for us, and I'll come back in a few minutes and I'll show you how you can view your diagrams, and hopefully they'll help you better understand your project. Be right back. Hey, welcome back. So Claude has finished creating the 4 diagrams that I asked it to create. I'll just step through them. You can see here is the network and request diagram. Here is the container composition diagram. Here's the CloudFormation stack diagram. If you're not familiar with CloudFormation, that is AWS's version of infrastructure as code. And then finally, we have the CICD pipeline. Now, if I was doing this for a real project, I would step through very carefully and review this. If I zoom in here, for example, you'll see that there's some overlap here. So you can't read this heading. This box is over this heading. So I would go back and have Claude fix that. I'm not as concerned here on this project, but you can iterate through these with Claude, explain to it what's wrong with it, and have it fix it. Now, if I flip back over, let's close this up. And if I flip back over to where I'm working on I2, we can see that Claude is just finishing up. So what it did was in stage I2, let me just pull that up. In I2 is where it began creating, I can't find my, here's my document. It began creating the infrastructure. So it started with CloudFormation. That's the infrastructure as code utility that AWS uses. So you can create a template file, upload it, or apply it in AWS, and it creates your infrastructure for you. So Claude created those files. It ran through the test, made sure that the format was correct. It hasn't implemented it yet because I told it to wait until step I4 for that. So we won't do that in this episode, but we'll do it later. And I'll have to set up the AWS profile and some resend and a few other things in GitHub so that I can then run this template so that it will create the infrastructure in AWS, but we'll do that later. So far we've seen how we can use Claude not just to build our project, not just to build the end-to-end test, but also ask about it and learn about them. And not just to begin building our infrastructure, but to get it to create some documentation for us in this case, in the form of these diagrams that we can use later, either just to look at ourselves to understand better, or to put them in other documents, or to put them on a website so that our users, especially support users, understand what's happening. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're going to come back later and finish phase I, and then we'll be ready to actually deploy TaskFlow into AWS and see it running. Thank you for joining, and I hope this has been helpful.